Welcome you guys out tonight to the marriage equality panel. Hopefully you were able to participate a little earlier and come and get your photo taken. But if not, we welcome you tonight. Just want to start by thanking our sponsors for this evening and for the whole NOH8 project that has happened today. So that's going to be the Committee to Advance Our Common Purposes, the Bias Prevention and Education Committee, Student Life, the Center for Social Justice Education and LGBT Communities, the Rutgers University Programming Association, or RUPA, the Dean of Students Office, and the Office for Violence Prevention and Victim Assistance. Just to let you know how the format's going to run tonight, we are going to have the panelists introduce themselves. I'm going to ask them a couple of different questions, and then there will be a time toward the end for some Q&A if anyone in the audience has some questions. We'll kind of go from there. Sound good? Cool. Awesome. So if you guys wouldn't mind, I'll actually start by introducing myself. Sorry. My name is Aron Hafner. I'm a graduate intern for Student Life for the Rutgers University Programming Association, and I'm a graduate student in the College of Student Affairs program here at Rutgers. If our panelists wouldn't mind introducing themselves, telling us kind of where you're from, what organization you're with, and I guess what interests you in being part of the panel tonight. We'll start with JaVonne.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is JaVonne. I'm a singer-songwriter, and I'm also an activist for marriage equality and all issues of equality. My partner and I actually are a couple who sing together for marriage equality. She was supposed to be here, but she's not. So I'm just here to do whatever I can to help.
Hi everyone. Hi, my name is Aron Cobbs, and I'm actually the Community Educator with Lambda Legal. Lambda Legal is the largest LGBT organization focused exclusively on LGBT issues and issues that disproportionately impact the lives of people living with HIV and AIDS. It's been around since 1973, and I work out of the Education and Public Affairs Department. And I'm here today to talk about marriage equality because marriage equality, in short, we'll go into more detail later, but it's a very pressing issue right now for our community because marriage equality for non-traditional and traditional couples alike, it helps them keep their commitments to each other and to their families. And I'm happy to go into more detail about that, but I'm here to help educate the community about why marriage is important.
Hello everyone. Is it too close for me? Okay. My name is Nina Young. I am a graduate student here at Rutgers University in the same program Eric is actually in. And then I'm also the veteran representative that's going to be here tonight as well. But overall, I'm here because Eric called me to be a part of this wonderful panel. But in general, I don't consider myself like much of an activist or advocate for the cause, but I am a big supporter of marriage equality, and I think I offer a different perspective.
And my name is Jeff Parshley. I'm the co-founder and the executive producer at the NOH8 Campaign. 3 years ago, we weren't activists at all, and we were just working regular jobs. And when Proposition 8 passed, it kind of struck a chord within Adam and myself, and we decided that we wanted to speak out. We wanted to help people put a face to the fight for equality, whether they're affected by legislation like Proposition 8 or whether it be they're allies of the LGBT community. And we thought that it was important that we started seeing people's faces who support the cause.
And my name is Bouska. Thank you to all the familiar faces that came out to support the NOH8 photo shoot today. I see a lot of you in here, so thank you guys. But I'm here today because essentially when Proposition 8 passed in California, we felt we were silenced. So any opportunity we get to speak out and any chance we get to share our stories, we take that opportunity. So that's why I'm here.
Thanks. Aron and Jeff, if you can tell us, what is the difference between marriage and a civil union? And why would someone want to choose one over the other?
Well, I think being from Lambda Legal, you can probably answer.
So essentially, marriage is, the difference between marriage and a civil union is basically different in name only for some people. And it's basically a political compromise that people have been, in our community, people advocating on behalf of LGBT people and outside sort of made that political compromise to appease and placate those who weren't willing to actually give equality to same-sex couples. So it's not exactly equal, it's a sort of separate but equal relegation. It's a relegation to a second-class status, essentially, and that's why it's unfair. And so if we can just call it what it really should be, and that is marriage, that's a term that everyone recognizes, right? That's a term that has, I think, a bit more resonance with the wider community, then that would be, I think, more beneficial to everyone, including LGBT people.
And not only that, like there's the rights that are afforded with marriage and the rights that are afforded with a civil union. You know, there's a huge difference. There's over 1,000 rights that are afforded when you're married than when you are entered into a civil unionship. So I think that the separate but equal is right, but I think that with everything that you are losing with marriage, it's important that we are all treated equally. We all have the same rights that everybody else has, no matter what the name of your relationship is.
Anyone have anything else to add? Adam and Jeff, I know that you touched about this briefly when you talked about becoming activists a few years ago and creating the No Hate Campaign. But why is the cause of marriage equality important to you, and why is that a cause that you decided to kind of take on?
Well, for us, I mean,
I think the obvious reason is because it affects us.
well, I mean, at the time we weren't engaged to be married, but it took that option off the table. So, I mean, we had never been activists, like Jeff had said, but the fact that something like this could happen in a community for us, especially after I grew up in a small town and moved to California looking for more freedoms. And I learned it was quite the opposite, but it took me that rude awakening to see that love or marriage could never be up for a vote in a place like California to really open my eyes.
And it just really goes to show that if it can happen to the LGBT community in regards to marriage, it can really happen to any community in regards to anything. So that's why majority voting on the rights of the minority, to us, is discrimination.
Aron, what changes have you seen in the battle for marriage equality on a national scale?
Well, I think we're gaining momentum in the movement nationally. There's now 10 states officially that recognize same-sex marriage. California is actually one of them. Back in 2008, 18,000, I think, roughly. I'd have to check the statistics, but 18,000 couples got married, and those marriages are still recognized today, despite the current legal system. So California is one of those states. Washington, of course, Iowa, DC, New York, New Hampshire, Vermont. Am I leaving out? Massachusetts, of course, yes. Anyway, a whole list of those. And so we're now sort of gaining momentum across the country and in different regions of the country where people are recognizing the need for marriage equality and understanding that civil unions just don't work. Our president, President Obama, and Eric Holder, Attorney General Holder, has even said that civil unions are unconstitutional. I mean, it doesn't get any simpler than that. So I think that if we have national leaders speaking out both within the community and outside of the community and lending their voices to the cause, then we're going to build on that momentum.
So with Aron speaking more on a national level, JaVonne, I know that you've been an activist in the state of New Jersey, so how has that fight kind of changed in the past couple of months to the past year or so?
Well, again, there is quite a bit of momentum building right now, but it's sort of like an up and down battle. It seems that at one point we're going to have legislature change. Everything is going to be great, and then you get a veto or whatever's going on. But, you know, the way I look at it, the much bigger issue is that marriage equality has to be equal on a national level, or else it'll never be equal at all. For those friends of mine who are married legally in New York, when they went to file their income state taxes federally, right? That's when they realized how much more fighting there is to do. When you think about Social Security benefits, those are federal benefits that married couples enjoy, and even if the law locally, you know, is okay, you can get married and You can enjoy all of the benefits locally. When it comes to the more important things, like you work all your life, you're in Social Security all your life. And if you don't have children, where does that money go? And I think that in a large part, our government depends on us not having anyone leave that money to, so they can go back to the government. And there are other laws that I'm not really sure about. I don't know 100%. But state by state is just not good enough for me. And the other thing that I've come to realize, and which is, it was also around the time of Proposition 8. And by the way, you guys are doing a wonderful job. Everywhere I look, I see you. You should be, yes, you should be very, very proud of yourselves. And I'm so sorry I didn't get to make it one of these days. I'm just stalking you guys.
Hold you to that.
Yes, yes. Yes, please do. But my partner and I were actually doing a telephone drive for marriage equality regarding state equality. And I looked around the room, and we were the only people of color in the room. And then I thought about all of the pictures that I've seen of marriage equality rallies. There's not many people of color in those rally pictures. And I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. And so we did, I had written her a song, a proposal song, Marriage Equality. Well, it wasn't Marriage Equality song right then. It was, Will You Please Marry Me, I Love You So Much. Whatever that means, or meant at the time. And then I decided that that song, we were going to change it, and we were going to dedicate it to the cause. And we were going to make a contribution because I wanted people of color to get involved. I wanted them to hear, and not for nothing, but we go with the beat. We go with the flow, you know? And so it's like R&B, soul type thing. And people, when we did the music video, people started writing, how moved and touched and inspired they were by the music, the video, and the cause they want to get married. I'm like, well, why aren't we in those pictures, It's very important that the fight for marriage equality is all-inclusive. No one group of LGBT, it can't be LG, it can't be BT, we all have to get together. Black, white, Asian, Latin, we all have to get together and fight this fight together. No one piece of us is going to get accepted. State by state, we all have to vote. And I'm trying my best to get that message out. That, if one hand doesn't communicate with the other, if we don't get together, going on and on. But that's my piece of it. That's what I'm trying to do. I don't know, like Aron knows the law, but I know that we all need to get together.
Well, yeah, and you touched on a really key point to it all. Like he knows the law, and our focus is in photography. Is everyone using their talent essentially to contribute back to society that's going to make the difference? And that's a big part of our message is the fact that it doesn't take an army, and it started with one voice, one person, one photo, and that's all it does take to spark that idea and to spark that movement.
Right. And just touching on one thing else that she said, about it can't just be the L and it can't just be the G and the B, but we have to remember that it can't even just be the LGBT community. We need all the straight allies. We need every single person that supports marriage equality to tell somebody to speak out, to use their voice, and to get that dialogue going and to show their face. Because once you create that link to that person that didn't think they were affected by Proposition 8, they're not affected by it. So start talking to people and get those allies on board to be supporters.
Now, Nina, I know that you have a kind of a different spin, not necessarily on marriage, but on equality. You were a veteran in the National Guard, and you were in service over in the Middle East, and you obviously were engaged during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. How did that kind of affect your role in the National Guard? And how do you feel since that policy has been repealed?
Right, so for all of you guys to know, I am an identified lesbian, but whenever I first joined the military, I was actually not out at all. I wasn't even thinking about that. I was a 17-year-old person that just saw the money that they would give me for college, and I joined. I just told my mom, hey, sign these papers, and she did. What was I thinking? So I joined at 17, and at that time, whenever you do join the National Guard, you basically go into service 1 weekend a month. And during that time, 1 weekend a month, you don't really need to get to know the people, so they don't really need to know about your personal life, right? So that didn't really matter because I wasn't out of the closet anyway, so it didn't, they didn't know, none of my friends knew, my parents didn't know. And it wasn't until my junior year that I really hit like a breaking point where I needed people to know about me and who I was. And I started coming out within my, I guess, social circle and like becoming to be really comfortable with myself. And what happened that same year was I found out I was getting deployed. And what's crazy is like being Don't Ask, Don't Tell, it was like I felt like I had to go back into the closet, and I deployed overseas, and then I began to like lie about boyfriends that I had and all these different things that, the life that I thought I had, but it really wasn't at all. And because I somehow constructed it in my head and made it believe it was true. But over some time, I began to tell my friends who were in the military vehicles with me, because we did convoy escort security, where we drove the trucks back and forth. You don't know anything about that. But we basically drove trucks back and forth, and we began to get to know each other really well, so I told them. I told them I was a lesbian, and then they told everyone else. And so in a way, it was like being outed, but it was like the best thing in the world, because I realized that they didn't care. And this might be just because it was a National Guard unit, and in a way, like we had civilian jobs back at home. And I realized that like I was really lucky, because I could have been in a unit that couldn't have taken it well, and I could have suffered repercussions. But overall, like I definitely gained the better experience, I guess you would have to say, with that. Whenever I came home, it was like really great being myself again, because I realized being part of such a conservative organization, being able to be open in that, I was able to go home and like be my true self when I was at college, where I should feel like comfortable enough to share who I was with everyone. And Don't Ask, Don't Tell actually got repealed on my graduation, so it was like the best day of the world, just FYI. Yeah, so that made me happy. But I feel like the military, there's a culture there that's like grounded in conservatism. And I think that's going to be really hard to change, but I think we're definitely taking a step in the right direction.
I'd actually just like to add to that. I mean, we've now seen Don't Ask, Don't Tell repealed, which is great, right? So, and that was on a federal, national level, and I think that there's still more momentum being built with the Respect for Marriage Act, which is going to combat, the Defense of Marriage Act. So, and that's also federal legislation, which, if passed, would grant when, I won't say if, but when New Jersey actually gets marriage equality. Regardless of whether you're married here or anywhere in the state, federally, your union will be respected and acknowledged as such. So that's just another glimmer of hope.
I know we've touched on this briefly, but to the panel, do you think that there should be one standard definition of marriage? And what would you say to those in the gay and even straight communities that don't believe in the institutions of marriage? Not all.
I think there definitely should only be one definition for marriage. I mean, we're all the same, afforded the same rights in that respect, so I think it should be treated the same. So I feel like that would be a simple answer.
I agree. The union between the two people doesn't change, whether it's a civil union or if it's a marriage. So why call it something different? That's how I think.
Also, marriage is a legal contract. So I think that everyone should be able to sign that contract, any adult. And I don't think that the contract should be different, whether you're straight, gay, bi,
Let's call it legally contracted.
Yeah, yeah, legally contracted.
Let's keep the whole religion separate. Let's keep it out.
Exactly.
Separation.
I would actually, I agree. We definitely, one word, one term, one definition. But even with that, I feel like, people's moral and political and, philosophical perspectives differences are going to persist. And I feel like we can all disagree, but one thing we can all agree on at the end of the day is that nobody deserves a second-class status. It didn't work. for women. We had the women's rights movement. It didn't work in the civil rights movement, and it's not going to work for the LGBT movement either.
Y'all touched on this a little bit earlier, saying that we all need to use our skills and kind of our talents to reach out and try to further the cause of marriage equality. Do you have anything else to say on what we as individuals or what audience members as individuals could do to advance the fight for marriage equality?
Well, I think a lot of people tend to interpret it and look for ways to get involved. They always expect it to be something monumental when they don't realize that just even sharing a story or talking to a family member, something as simple as that could move the cause forward. I think we all need to just take a look in our own lives and look to our own circles and groups of friends and see to whom we can speak to and who we can educate on the issues, because I think it's as simple as that, as raising awareness and making our story shared.
Yeah, like I said before, I think that when Proposition 8 passed in California, a lot of people didn't feel, or I heard a lot of people saying, well, Proposition 8 doesn't really affect me, so it doesn't really matter to me which way it goes. But I think that, like Adam said, when we share our stories and when we talk to people and we tell them that we're affected and the people that care about us, we do create that link, and then those people are affected in turn. And if we just keep linking up, it's just there's no way. It's not going to happen.
And even something as simple as showing up, like you're here today. That to me is an amazing show of support, and encourage your friends to come with you next time. Sometimes that's
Strength in numbers. For sure.
yes, absolutely. I believe in
How
that.
we raise awareness, we show them we're here, we're loud, and we're proud.
That's right.
Absolutely. How has not being able to get married affected your relationships, not only with like a spouse or a significant other, but also with like family members, with coworkers, those types of relationships, or has it?
I know it made ours stronger.
Yeah, as I
Just
said.
because the fact that Proposition 8 passed, and like he said, like when Adam said, we weren't looking to get married, but it's the fact that the option wasn't there that struck it with us and made us want to do something. So I think together, by creating the campaign and growing together, and then a year after the campaign started, we're engaged. It brought us together and showed us that we have to stand up for each other. So starting with the two of us, we're going to stand up for each other, and we're going to hope to stand up with everybody else, possibly too.
It's also helped my relationship with my parents and my family as well, because prior to all this, I don't think they truly understood how important it was to me or how much it had affected me. So to see me get involved and to see that, they've become my biggest cheerleaders to this day. So that's really been important to me, and it definitely has brought us all closer.
More often than not, the majority of folks probably don't think about the issue unless or until it affects them. How do you think that we can reach out to a younger generation and to folks who aren't thinking about marriage to take up the cause? I know that we've mentioned, just kind of showing up and kind of reaching out, but any additional thoughts on that?
I mean, I would say just, for us, it's always trying to keep involved, keep them interested. The kids tend to understand it, but for us, it's just incorporating marriage equality into what's current. Social media for us is how marketing has changed. So we're trying to stay involved in that respect and keep that dialogue open and just try to work with them as much as possible, include them into what we're doing and make them a part of it.
It's important to make them think that they're actually making a difference. By coming out and doing the photo and using the photo or talking about the photo, they're doing something.
I agree. I believe power's in the music.
Sure. How do you ask people to reconcile same-sex marriage with their religious views, and how has that come up, and how have those discussions gone?
Yeah, that's always a tough one, but for me, it's like I try to relate it to our cause. Our cause is about no hate and not being able to judge people on their differences, and that goes with religious discrimination as well. Everyone's entitled to their own beliefs and their own way of life, so we just encourage everyone to take that time to kind of view their own lives and view how they're different and how they wouldn't want to be criticized or have someone create their rights for them.
Yeah, I also think it's important to recognize the distinction between marriage, civil marriage, and then the ceremony. Various faith leaders, faith communities have always reserved the right to, marry or not marry certain couples, not even, more traditional couples. either because one person was of a different religion or one person was previously married or divorced. So nobody wants to take, the right of freedom of religion away from, faith leaders or faith communities, but it's important to recognize the distinction between the ceremony and, the civil marriage, and that's when we have to educate people on. So I think that's really important.
Right, that goes back to the contract talk that I was having. There's a separation of church and state, and the whole issue of this being a moral concern, that piece of it should be discussed amongst faith leaders. In terms of the legal contract, I think it's pretty simple. Why shouldn't I be able to sign that contract with another human being, whoever it is, if we both agree?
I think that's a conversation that I've always found difficulty with, just because I've always struggled with finding my faith, and then also having that align with who I am in regards to like my GLBTQ or whatever identity. And honestly, I really don't know the answer to that. So.
Well, I think it's crazy though, because you have to think that religion is supposed to be meant to bring people together. So I always go to the argument, why is religion trying to tear people apart? That's not the purpose for religion, or that's not the religion I was raised with, and I'm not even practicing it.
Why do you think then that people are afraid of this issue, or do you think that they are?
Fear of the unknown.
Yeah, I think people are afraid of what they know about. And, with those people that are going to go out and create that dialogue with other people, I think that, they'll be educated. And for them to actually see somebody and meet somebody and know somebody that is LGBT, it makes a big difference. Because then they can actually put somebody with the stereotype, if that's what they're thinking in their head, that it's not all a stereotype, that we're all just the same as they are.
Unfortunately, the opposition's done an amazing job at getting these laws passed and spreading terrible truth, or terrible lies, I guess, and just spitting the truth. So I think we just need to become organized ourselves and realize this is something that we can't take for granted and we need to work for.
What do you think about the focus on marriage equality in the upcoming elections? Obviously, with every election season that comes around, there's usually one or two hot-button issues. It seems like for the past couple of cycles, marriage equality has been toward the top. Do you think that's going to be a factor in the upcoming presidential election? And if so, how do you see that fitting in?
I think it's ridiculous right now.
But yeah, it won't be the Republican debate, let's put it that way. I would think it should be most definitely part of the hot button issues. It always has been. It's something that affects a wide part of our population, and it's something that has been in the media. We've seen with LGBT suicides. It's something that trickles down and directly affects our youth. So I feel like it definitely should be a topic. How that will be handled, I don't know.
Part that I think is unfortunate is that they're telling people that they're going to take away rights to get people to vote for them. If they're going to take away somebody's rights to get you to vote for them, who's to say they're not going to take away your right next year? So I think it's hard for me to trust anybody that is not looking at this country as United States, as all as one. So that's why I kind of think they're ridiculous.
Well, and if it's not the issue, we need to make it the issue. We need to be out there asking the questions, and we need to show them that we care about it to make it the issue. But we've seen Barack Obama do a lot for the LGBT rights movements in the past, so I feel like he would stand up for the cause, seeing how crazy some of these Rick Santorum comments can be. That could create some amazing debate and educate a lot of people in the process, so I hope that does happen.
Aron, any thoughts about that? Because I know that you're obviously fighting this battle in lots of states. Will that play into the elections at all, do you think? Or how has your organization seen that?
Well, I'm sorry. What I can say about that is that, of course, Lambda is a nonpartisan organization, and we do hope that it does figure prominently in the debates, and that people are going to have conversations about it, and that people will make the right decision and be on the right side of history. And I think we all know what that is.
So recently, the National Organization for Marriage had documents released that explicitly called for increased tensions between the LGBTQ community and the Black and Latino communities. And what are your thoughts on that?
I just think it shows NOM, National Organization for Marriage, for who they are. I mean, it shows their sneaky tactics and ways that they're trying to kind of spin those lies again. They're just trying to, spread lies. It's as simple as that. I mean, I feel like this is nothing new for the National Organization of Marriage, nothing new for the fight, but we need to do as much as we can to become organized to overcome things like that.
And what's interesting about that is this sort of dual demonization of two different communities, and we're focused on the mainstream LGBT community and then the Black and Latino communities, and we're forgetting about the people who are sort of caught in between those tensions and who are walking a common ground of intersecting identities, that being both queer or LGBT and Black and or Latino or Asian or Arab, what have you. So I think that it's very important for us to sort of focus our attention on the people who are caught at those intersections and listen to their voices, because I think they have a pretty interesting thing to say, I'm being one of them. So I think that's, important. Thank you.
Plus, I think it speaks a lot to the organization that, although the tactic might be against same-sex marriage, the fact that they're speaking to different skin colors and using that as a tactic, I think speaks more to their discriminatory ways. I think it shows how that can cross many platforms and why we need to all stick together, whether it be just LGBT or how the whole community can come together beyond just LGBT and allies and more.
I know that we've talked a little bit about all these opposing factors, kind of telling lies and spreading lies. I could be wrong, but I have a feeling that they probably don't feel that they're lies. What would you say to some people who might approach you in that manner, or how do you think that we can educate the people who, in our eyes, obviously, I think it's spreading lies, but in their eyes, it's not that case.
I think it's important that if anybody is going to go to a ballot box and cast a vote, that they're fully educated on what they're voting on. A lot of people with Proposition 8, it was a little confusing where yes meant no and no meant yes. So I think that the people that weren't as educated on that proposition that were going to vote, that knew Proposition 8 was about marriage equality, and that's all they knew, then they would vote yes I support marriage equality, so I'm going to vote yes on this. So I think if everybody's fully educated about every single thing that they're voting on, then they're going to see into that, and they're going to educate themselves on what's being spread, about the repercussions that will happen should this happen, and then they'll know the truth, I think.
Organizations lately like Starbucks have come under attack for supporting same-sex marriage, and then organizations like Chick-fil-A have come under fire for not supporting same-sex marriage. Should either corporation be under attack, and do you think that we'll see more stances like this taken in the open market in the future?
I would say most definitely and 100%. We need to hold people accountable for their actions. Organizations or corporations are people too. They represent thousands of people, and we need to hold them accountable for where they spend their money and how they spend their money. Those are our dollars going back into the community, so we need to make sure that they're protecting everyone and not discriminating and hurting others.
I would also like to add to that. I think that leaders in these organizations and these big corporations often use their clout, their money, to lend their support to different political causes. And we have to also remember that whether it's Chick-fil-A, Starbucks, Walmart, what have you, that there are employees in those organizations that are also LGBT, of color, women, and other marginalized statuses. So I think it's important to sort of see those as opportunities to educate and to educate and sort of transform the hearts and minds of those leaders in those organizations and corporations, for the sake of the broader community, that being us, but also the employees there as well, because they don't necessarily make those decisions. So I think that's important.
I think as awareness is spreading and the human rights movement is expanding, I think people are understanding the importance of the pink dollar and how LGBT people have that economic leverage and power. So I think, especially in the bad economies, we're definitely going to have more of a voice and people are going to recognize that.
Did you say the power of the pink dollar? I love it.
Not my phrase, but I'll take it.
That's great. Thank you guys for answering these questions. We're going to go ahead and turn to some audience questions now. If anyone has any, go ahead and raise your hand. And if Alana, you can come and grab the mic. It's possible this will be posted someday, so we just want to make sure that your questions are heard. Let's go in the front row right here.
All right, first of all, I want to say I understand 100% about the small town thing. I'm involved in activism here in Jersey, but I'm also involved in my home state of West Virginia. You can imagine how fun that is. That's actually one of my questions. A legislator down there just introduced a civil union bill, and he even admitted it's not going to go anywhere, but he wanted to start a dialogue. West Virginia does have it's either an amendment or a statute, I'm not sure, but it is like DOMA. It specifies as one man and one woman. I was talking to some other activists down there, like how do we kind of fight that? Like I know how civil union, I'm fighting against civil unions in New Jersey while trying to get them in West Virginia, and I'm telling them they don't work, but we might have to start somewhere. So we were trying to figure out how we do that. Do we just fight for a civil union and then go for equality, or just go right for full equality?
I would start just by saying that, I mean, it depends on, the sort of the political and socioeconomic climate of the state that you're in. And as you say, like you feel like you're in a pretty hostile environment. So there's certain things, right, you have to set measurable goals and have a reasonable timeline by which to meet them. And if you know that pushing for marriage first is not gonna work, then you get what you can get, right? And hopefully, improve upon that. But then there's, the other side of me, and I'm sure the side of you too, that says, what, screw that. Like, I want my rights now. I don't want half justice. I want full justice. I want full equality. I want half equality. So, it's tricky. I think there's compromise on both sides. But I do think that it's very important that you raise that issue because so often we're so used to preaching to the choir and working with allies and people who think and feel like us when it's also very important that we go into a little more like hostile terrains and go into conversations with our opponents. So, good luck.
I definitely agree in steps in the right direction. So if you have to, fight for a civil right, a civil union to ultimately get married, then take that step, and then the fight for marriage equality will be that much easier.
Other questions? Over here.
Hi, my name is Dusty, and Dusty Ballard, and I'm not a student here, but I work in New Brunswick. I work for the George Street Playhouse, and I work with a number of other professional theater companies, in the area, and one company, Alliance Repertory Theater, has been working on their production of The Temperamentals, which I've been working on too, and I have cards if anybody is interested. But it's about the founding of the Mattachine Society, one of the first gay rights activist organizations in America. And we actually have John Mearns, the playwright, coming from New York to Edison tomorrow to be a part of the talkback. If any of you are interested, I have cards. So, so I'm not just shouting out, I do have a question. So today I was here earlier for the photo shoot. Also for the Temperamentals, we ordered our own tattoos, took our own pictures and used it to help us promote the show. And it really worked. People love the photos, they'd love to show them to you later. But as I was walking around New Brunswick, I got so many questions about the tattoo because I left it on my face, and which I had to take it off later because I was teaching, and they're in 3rd grade, and it could be a long discussion. So, but there were many people who did not even know about Proposition 8, which I found fascinating. But I mean, even at Chipotle, the guy was like, "What is Proposition? I don't even know about that." And I mean, he was young. He looked really like he, kept up with the times, but he didn't. But anyway, so just having it on my face really sparked conversation. But my question is, I encounter a lot of people who identify as straight who are really on the fence about this issue. And sometimes they cite, well, aren't there members of the gay community who don't support marriage equality? And I find that they're really confused as to how to throw their support. So my question is, what kind of dialogue would you suggest having with that straight person who's on the fence, who doesn't know what to say?
I know what I would say is, I mean, this is obviously somebody that you know, people that you know, you mean?
I mean, people I've known, and then even just
Right.
Like the Chipotle guy.
the Chipotle guy.
I think if there's not a counter between you, I think the best thing for you to do is to tell them exactly how it's personally affecting you, so that they can then say, well, I'm your friend, and if this thing is affecting you so much in this way, and it's preventing this from happening, and it's keeping these rights from you, I feel like as a friend, they should come to your side of the fence, and they should support you as a friend.
And it sounded like a little bit of a confusion of topics, and I'm sure there's gays that don't want to get married, as sure as just as well there's straight people that don't want to get married as well, but it's about having that option and everyone being entitled to have that freedom and that right, or whether they want to be married or not.
Other questions?
Thanks. I have a two-part question. Two separate questions, sorry. You guys talked about the political aspect a little bit. Chris Christie's recent veto and proposal of putting it to a referendum. There was a discussion that does civil rights triumph something like a referendum that sort of goes beyond, you know, some say that civil rights back in the 60s, that if it were put to a referendum, African Americans may not have the rights that they have today, that civil rights triumphs that. I was wondering if you agree with that. My second question is based on how much was the tragedy involving Tyler Clementi, how much was that a factor in coming here? Did you feel it was especially important in coming here to visit? And if you could just give some general feelings on that. Sorry, that was really long.
Well, I think that Tyler Clementi definitely played a big, important role for us wanting to come here and be a part of the photo shoot. We had a lot of students directly after the incident reach out to us, wanting to raise awareness, wanting to speak out to what had been going on. So we saw a perfect opportunity, like with Proposition 8, to turn tragic, negative experience into something positive.
Also, this a two-part answer, not that I'm but I think you pose some very interesting and important questions. For me, with Mr. Clemente dying the way he did, it speaks to a bigger issue in terms of community for me. Oftentimes, LGBT and just young people, period, feel alone. And there's a very, very big LGBT community here in New Brunswick, all throughout New Jersey. In some kind of way, I'm all about bridging the gap. It's about connections and it's about communication. So just, you know, understand that it's important that when you see something, you say something and make yourself available for other people. That's very, very important. And, as a matter of fact, this is maybe, it might sound like a shameless plug, but it's really not. This Saturday I'm having a concert at Rutgers University, and it is a marriage equality concert. That was what it started. And then it became, I got the idea that there's a large LGBT community in Newark. There's a church, there's just so much stuff going on. That I wanted to connect the church with the students at Rutgers, so Are You Pride in Newark is going to play a part in the concert. And there's a big anti-bullying campaign that's going on as a part of the concert. And Aron is going to be there to talk about the law at the concert. And yes, there'll be music thrown in there too. But it's really about, you know, that incident, I think, really catapulted me into a different phase of action. So, and then to just talk really briefly about the civil rights thing. Again, it had to take place on the federal level in order for any change, any real change to take place. State by state, civil rights were going to be what civil rights were going to be. If the federal government did not get involved, then pretty much I'd be on the back of the bus today. So But every little step, every little footstep, and every little march, and it took more than just people of color to make that happen. We all had to get together, every person that believed in civil rights and just the rights of all people. You know, everybody has to stand up. Thanks for your question.
Hi, I just had a question about like a lot of, I guess, campaigns for the LGBT movement have this problem where they're not really reaching out to communities that don't speak English, that they speak like Spanish or Indian or different Chinese languages. Like, how do you think that can be resolved?
I know that one of the PSAs that we did, it was spoken in 9 different languages. Chris actually directed it over there, but he would probably know all the languages because he directed it. But I mean, there's like Dutch and Farsi and sign language and Spanish.
Yeah, we definitely saw the same divide, though. We definitely see how there's definitely that extra communication barrier. But the beauty behind the No Hate campaign is that the message is transmitted through a visual. It's a picture. So the language is truly just love and people showing that support. So we're trying to, we've seen that same divide too, and we're trying to figure out ways to overcome that. Because again, this isn't just an American issue. This is something worldwide that we all can contribute and be a part of.
I'd also like to add to that is what you mentioned, translating in those numerous different languages. It takes a lot of work, and we just can't be afraid to do the work. We just have to stop being lazy, to be quite honest. There's no other way to put it. There are people that speak more than just English. They speak more than just Spanish and Chinese and what have you. And so once we get people, we reach out to those communities and show that we care about increasing like their visibility within the broader LGBT movement, then I think that's when we're going to get more translations and broader diversity. Lambda, for instance, has a Latino outreach program, and it's called Proyecto Igualdad, and that is actually quite successful right now. We have a number of our materials that you may have seen outside were translated through that program into Spanish, and that's just a start. It's clearly not the end. There are more than 2 communities of color, so obviously we need to do more, but we're working on it, so that's a good question.
Yeah, we've come a long way in America, but like you've even seen in places like over in China where they're having a lot of human rights issues, or even in the Middle East, there's a lot of issues with the LGBTs, just being able to be out. So even though we're fighting for marriage equality, there's something so different going on all over the world. So if we just raise awareness and use our social media as ways to finally be able to connect like we haven't before, I think we can see a lot of changes a lot faster.
Hello, I just want to say thank you, all of you, for coming. The photo shoot was amazing, but I actually took more from it the aftermath of it. And actually, I don't know if you plan on doing this, but I was actually speaking to other students and just being duct taped and having our mouths covered. There was this instant as soon as it went on that like, okay, I was anxious about getting my photo taken. Okay. But on top of that, it was just, I all of a sudden felt it. And it was like, 20 years of not maybe coming to terms with inequality, and I suddenly felt it all in that moment. And even afterwards, I went to the dining hall, and there was at least 9 other students that had the tattoo on their face, all sitting at different tables, and it showed that it was just, and all the faces looked different, and people were of different ages. And that shows that your campaign's really getting out there, and thank you for that. But my questions are, how do you think that marriage equality will translate to other issues such as bullying or self-acceptance? And also, what made you choose to advocate on sexuality other than maybe other identities, and how have you been able to connect to your own personal identities and advocate for them all together?
Well, for us it was, after Proposition 8 passed, like we said, we were activists prior to Proposition 8. So when it passed, and it just kind of opened our eyes. I think a lot of people in California were just like, well, Proposition 8 will never pass here. This is California, that's never going to happen. But then it did. And I think a lot of people were caught off guard. I think that it was the fact that the option wasn't there, that our right was taken away. It wasn't, this could have been any issue. It just happened to be Proposition 8. And it's ultimately about discrimination and treating each other equally and, voting to take away the rights of American citizens. So it really could have been any issue. It just happened to be Proposition 8, but for us, it was just so personal to us.
Yeah, I think it struck at just such a key time too. I mean, here we're living in 2008, it's America, the land of the free, and our whole lives, I've been hiding who I was, and I finally had the opportunity to be proud of who I was, and this is something, being a gay photographer, that kind of set me to stand out different than my friends and my family, but this is something I learned that I was proud of instead of something to be ashamed of. So when you see something on state level where they can write discrimination into the Constitution, essentially, it really shows how far they can go.
I'd just like to briefly address the question of how marriage equality may eventually affect bullying. I believe that marriage equality will normalize our relationships. Maybe not initially, you know how we do in this country. When someone wants to change something, we kill them, right? But things change anyway. And eventually, I think that it'll be more common that people are getting married, same-sex couples. I think that little boys and little girls will grow up seeing next-door neighbors that are gay and lesbian, and it'll be just the normal thing, and people will eventually accept it. If, it'll take a while. It took a while for people of color to get jobs and certain things, and for it to be the norm that you see a black doctor or whatever, attorneys. After a while, baseball players, football players, whatever, it gets better. It does.
Yeah, she made a good point, when these kids have to learn to act this way. So when they're seeing our government and the adults treating the LGBT community the way that they do and degrading them in the words that they say, they're going to do that. So I think that ultimately when the LGBT community is looked at as equal, there won't be so much slander coming from the government and from the adults that surround those children, and I feel like the bullying will ultimately go down because of that. I hope.
And those are all great answers, actually. That was a great question. I want to address I think the last question you said about why we choose to mobilize and do activism around sexuality and not other identities. And I think that, for me at least, it raises the issue of, is it just one identity? If you look at us on this panel today, we're all of different or non-traditional sexualities, but we're all different in other ways, and there are other things we have in common besides that. So I think it's really important to sort of focus, and I don't want to sound too bookish about it, but really focusing on the intersections of identities and realizing that when you help someone who's most marginalized and most at the margins, most vulnerable, you're helping so many other people. Not everybody, but so many other people. So I think it's really important to just sort of see in other ways that people are marginalized while at the same time focusing on what unifies us. Sexuality, okay, let's look at some other things, I'm gay, but I'm still a male. And in society, at least in our society, that has still a lot of power and privilege. So maybe I shouldn't focus so much on what I'm going through, but maybe I should look at what JaVonne experiences as a black woman who's also queer. Or, what Nina experiences as, an Asian American woman who's also queer. So there's other things I think that we should also sort of focus on. It. Sometimes our issues have to take a backseat to some other things. At least when our privilege dominates other things.
Is there a question in the second round?
I have two, if that's okay. The first one is there any established ally initiative that has emerged from the LGBT movement? And the second one is, has the LGBT movement collectively done anything or had a response to the murders of Trayvon Martin or Shema Alawati?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the first question?
Is there any established ally initiative for allies, like trying to get allies is the main goal of the organization?
I know I can speak for Lambda on this. We actively work to recruit allies. As I said before, it's not so much just about getting people who are on our side or directly affected by the issues. You need allies to help sort of transform the hearts and minds of people who would otherwise just not listen to us, to be quite frank. In terms of the other issue you mentioned with Trayvon Martin, there is actually an open letter that Lambda Legal has signed onto, and a number of other LGBT organizations have signed onto in support of supporting Trayvon Martin and the recent tragedy that's sort of befallen the country around that. And people would probably say, well, why is that? But if you look at the issues, I mean, this was clearly something that happened. It was racially motivated, amongst other things. And if you can oppress that person and step on that person's rights, who's to say that that same guy wouldn't have done the same thing to Trayvon or us, if he knew Trayvon was queer or, something similar. So I think that speaks to sort of a connectedness. So I think that's a very good question.
To go to your first question, we've worked a lot with an organization called Athlete Ally. It was started by Hudson Taylor, who's a straight wrestling coach. He was a wrestler, now he's a wrestling coach. And what he does is he gets people that are in the sports community and are athletes to kind of debunk that taboo that goes along with homophobia in the sports community. But just from what we know, he's a straight ally, and he created an organization to bring other allies together. And I think that people like Hudson Taylor are amazing people for what they do, and I think he's very effective at it. And I think that it really does make a big difference to be educated by somebody that is not speaking on behalf of themselves. So, when they're trying to, support another community and stand up for another community, I think it definitely helps a lot.
Take just a couple more questions if there are any.
I was just wondering if you could talk more about, you talked a lot about, previous fears and things of that nature, but what fears do you guys still have today, both individually, and what fears do you still have of the cause, and is fear one of the biggest adversaries of the movement, coinciding with lack of education? That's it.
I feel fear is the way that the biggest thing that religion has going for it. I feel like that's their route. That's the way that spin it. But for me, I remain more hopeful towards the future more than anything, because I feel like even though Proposition 8 still stands in legal limbo in California, we've seen major advancements just in the past few years. And I know even personally what we've seen in our lives and the amazing things that communities and how they've come together just since 2008. I think that just kept us more hopeful than anything. And if anything, I would remain fearful that people take all this forward momentum for granted and they don't do more with it. Because we're really moving at a great pace, and I would just love to see them stay with us. So if you're anything, it's just that they will stay with it, take it for granted, like Proposition 8.
He's got a good point. Like when you're fighting for civil unions in New Jersey, like when you get your civil unions and you take that step, that doesn't mean like we're done. That means we have to keep taking those steps. And to address your question, I have more of a concern than a fear, and I think that my main concern would be that people or the country can get into the habit of putting minorities' rights up to a vote, and any minority's rights can be up to a vote one day. And I think that would be my main concern, that any other minority would have to experience what we're experiencing right now, and that they would be stripped of their right, whatever that right may be, that's up for them.
Yeah, I think we need to just be clear and remain optimistic, but also never forget that the opposition is extremely organized and that they are out there and they won't stop what they're doing. It's something that's been going on for years and it's something that won't stop. So we just need to be very knowledgeable of that and educate ourselves to what they're doing as well.
And I'll just add to that is that this idea of like us versus them sometimes, while there is an opposition, we also want to be thinking like, okay, how can we pull you over to our side? You know what I'm saying? I think that that's also very important, that whole transforming, and I know it sounds kind of hokey, but it's really how victories are won at the end of the day. You have to convert people. And doesn't that feel good to change people's minds? I love it.
He's good. I mean, that's really what we all need to do, is we need to change hearts and minds. So, you know, when there's somebody like Isaiah Washington who says anti-gay slurs, you know, in public about one of his castmates, that's a problem. But we're trying to change hearts and minds. So if we can talk to Isaiah Washington and try to show him tell him where we're coming from, and tell him how that hurt not only TR9, but that hurt the entire community, and that just kind of, there was a little ripple effect after that. You know, if we can change his heart and mind, and he can come in and do a photo and now support the No Hate campaign, I think that's what we're going for. You know, a lot of people, Adam sometimes jokes and says, maybe, you know, it'd be great to see Michelle Bachmann do a photo. She probably won't do a photo, but
it would be great to raise awareness. Yeah. It would be great to show people, like, hey, look what can happen. This is possible.
And if she does a photo, we changed her heart and mind. We changed her. It's not like, oh, you have a bigot doing a photo for your campaign. No, no. We changed her heart. We changed her mind, and she is now a supporter. And she's now maybe one day.
There's a question in the back.
This isn't my question, but I will pay Michelle Bachmann's $40 if she legitimately, if that happens. I mean, I'm sure 100 people in this room would do it. My question is, could you just talk about a little bit of like how the idea for what the photo looks like kind of came about, and like where that came from, you know, and how you both sort of
essentially, Jeff and I started the No Hate campaign after the passage of Proposition 8 in California, and we were taking part in the rallies and the marches, and we were just really inspired by the rally, and we saw all the different faces and the different people supporting and the different emotion that night.
There was a lot of energy on that street. Like, we were marching through the streets of Hollywood on Sunset Boulevard with thousands and thousands of people. And the energy in that street with the posters and people chanting and just demanding their rights, and people honking and driving by, and people coming out their 3-story window to you know, raise a fist in support and to clap for what they're seeing. It was just extremely emotional.
And then the studio being my living room, we went back and started taking images that night, but we felt essentially that our voices as the minority in California weren't being heard, and we weren't being represented on that government level. Our voices weren't being represented, so that's where the symbolization of the duct tape came from. And then we've seen a lot of PSAs and different campaigns be photographed in black and white, so we saw this as an opportunity to use the white on white to focus on people's diverse skin colors. And being a human rights type of campaign, we saw that as an opportunity to have that visual impact on people. And also, we felt it was important that the subjects be looking into the camera so that people looking at the photos has that connection with those that they're looking at and understand that as part of the cause while they're reading hate on the face, because that's what it is, it's hate.
We wanted to make sure people were focusing on the person's face. Like you said, for the white on white, it automatically draws you to the subject of the person. And, you know, to see the different skin tones, to see the different hair colors, to see the different shapes and sizes of people, to see how different we all really are, but in a similar photo. We all have similar photos, but we're all so different. 2 people can do the same exact pose in a photo, and they'll come out completely differently, because we're all different. So we wanted to make sure people were focusing on the faces. Like, our goal was to put a face to the fight. So the white on white just kept it very simple with the face, and we had to have the protest side of it with the No Hate.
And we've kept true to that same idea since the very first photo. We keep it simple as possible to allow as many people to be a part of it as possible. This is something everyone has access to, everyone has Cradle of Paints at home or a white shirt that they can throw on. Everyone has a way to make a version of this photo to start that dialogue at home, and we always encourage that, and we always urge people to do that.
We'll take one more question.
Hi, yeah, we should definitely like start a Facebook campaign with Michelle Bachman. They got Betty White.
I like that idea. I like
so
that
yeah, we
idea.
should do it. We should do it. Let's get that started.
We'll post that. You start it, we'll post that.
Right, yeah, definitely. To what you were saying earlier, I do really think kids are listening. I was working with some 4-year-olds the other day, and I was reading them this story, and it was a Native American Cinderella story, and instead of the lost shoe or anything, the prince character was invisible, and he would come home, and he told his sister to bring the women from the town to see if they could see him. And the first woman who saw him was the one he would marry. That's the story. However, when I reviewed this with them, I said, okay, so the first person that sees him will be the one that he marries. And a 5-year-old girl in this group of 5-year-olds goes, but what if a boy saw him? And now, as the teacher, I'm faced with this question. I was interrupted by another 5-year-old boy who said, Kaylee, it's okay. Boys can marry boys. And Kaylee said, right? And Kaylee said, oh, okay. And that's how it goes. So I really do think kids are listening. And I told the person who ran the school, she was thrilled. So I think educators are moving in the right direction. I think it's happening. But speaking of Michelle Bachman, you have had so many celebrities like come out for this. Were there any that like totally surprised you and shocked you that came out that you were like, wow, I didn't think you would come out?
Oh, most definitely, and I think we're constantly surprised by new faces and people that come through, but one of our biggest surprises when I was photographing Meghan McCain's book cover, Dirty Sexy Politics, and in the studio we had Cindy McCain just come lend her moral support for Meghan, yeah, and essentially we saw her with a no hate button at one point, and we were really excited to see her.
She had a black turtleneck on, and when we saw the little no hate pin on her collar, I was like,
yeah, and then Meghan kind of connected those dots, and she was like, hey, can Cindy take a photo? And by that time we were dumping out the equipment, we were all about it, but it was one of our biggest news days, press days the next day, and it really raised a lot of awareness and showed that conservatives can support this issue too. It's not a party politics issue. Everyone has a way to get involved, and we're just constantly surprised. Everyone has a way to get involved, and we try to make that easy.
I think one of the things that's, for me, that I like about the campaign is that, it does put that face to it. For like Cindy McCain, I don't think she just started supporting marriage equality that day that she came to our studio. So I think she's been supportive for a while, but nobody knew that. So when she took that step to make a public stance, to put it out there, and to tell everybody how she feels, it caught a lot of people off guard. But that just goes to show that there's a lot of people that support equality that we probably don't even know. So we need those people, those Cindy McCains, and those Miley Cyruses, and those younger people, and the older people, the Slashes, and people like that to speak out, because there's so many people that they influence. And I'm sure that Cindy McCain changed hearts and minds in that Republican community. And if she didn't change a mind, she at least opened some, And I think that that's where it starts. And so for all these celebrities that are doing photos, I applaud every single one of them. I applaud anybody that does a photo, because who would have thought 40 years ago, we would have lines of 400 people coming to put their face to a campaign that supports LGBT equality. That probably wouldn't have happened. So it's just overwhelming to see that. And people need to remember everybody does have an influence on someone, and everybody can make a connection with somebody. Whether you're Cindy McCain and you can influence the Republicans, or you're Miley Cyrus and you can influence the world, or you're somebody like me who grew up in New Hampshire and I can influence my dad. My dad in New Hampshire, it was going up to, they were trying to repeal the marriage law in New Hampshire, and because of the No Hate campaign, and because of what we've done, and because of the dialogue that I've created with my family, my dad wrote a letter to his representative. He would never have done that before, never. He's riding his Harleys, you know, drinking his Budweisers and doing whatever. He doesn't do stuff like this, but he was inspired and he saw that somebody was affected and he used his voice. And I think that every single person influences somebody.
Are there any closing thoughts from the panel?
That was mine.
Well, I just wanted to let you all know again that it's just important that you show up for yourselves and for your friends, if not only just for this issue, but anytime you see people going through things. I mean, you know, what Mr. Clemente went through spoke to our specific issue, but there are other people going through other things, and you may know about it. If you see something, do something. You know, make yourself available. Love on one another.
I would actually just echo that and say thank you guys all for coming. I've had a wonderful day at both the resource fair and seeing everybody getting their pictures taken, and now finally this. To just stay, encouraged and keep fighting and transforming hearts and minds and opening minds, because when people know better, they do better at some point. And it really is only a matter of time before this is like a non-issue. Hopefully we'll see it in our lifetime. So.
I guess I'm expecting to say something.
Right.
Right. All right, got it. Okay, so you guys know a lot, and I feel like I need to learn more, and I think, honestly, I need to join something. we'll figure this out.
Join the campaign today.
Right. But I should thank you for coming too. Thank you guys all for coming. I think it's crazy how like I was brought to this panel to like provide insight, but you guys have really told me a lot, because I mean, as a supporter, I'm so ingrained in my graduate school work, and there's a lot of us here that we just got done with this 20-page paper, and then all we think about is cows, because we write about cows, and it's really, really hard to be like well-versed in all this material that you guys have just on the back of your minds, and I think it's just really put a different perspective in my head and like what I should be thinking about when I get out of grad school and I have time to think about other issues. So, let's go by graduating the year.
Well, like she said, we're all up here representing kind of like a different perspective and a different view on the issue, but like us, you all have a voice, and without you, we really couldn't be doing what we're doing. We always say it, but this is definitely a community-driven effort, and even with the photo shoot today, we could be taking photos all day long, but it's really up to you guys to take those photos and to spread the message. Use the photos on Facebook, Twitter, and wherever you can to help raise that awareness, because we really couldn't do it alone. We're just doing our part of the whole puzzle, but the whole movement is really dependent upon the community and doing your part. So we really just want to stress that and can't stress that enough.
Just want to close quickly by thanking our sponsors again. Also thanking all of you for coming out. I also want to publicly thank my partner who's sitting in the front row. This process has been a long, road, I think, and especially with grad school and just everything we've had going on. Thank you for bearing with me. And then I want to thank our panelists. If we can give them a round of applause.